Welcome to MeatsPad, a platform dedicated to sharing breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the meats industry. On each episode, we will hear from meat specialists and professionals to talk about numerous topics in meat science, including animal welfare, meat production, meat quality, food safety, and so much more.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. Today, it's an honor to have one of my mentors that after a little over a year of begging him to come and be on MeatsPad, he's with us today. Welcome, Dr. Velazco. How are you, Dr. Bass?
I'm great, and I'm excited to have Chewy with us here because we have interacted in the past in my former life with certified Angus beef, and that's one of the products that you carry.
Yes.
With the HEB Mexico line of retail stores. It is an honor to have you here because you have a lengthy career within the retail sector, and we would love to get your perspective. First, I'd like to start the conversation is on what does it take to have a successful retail meat business? Big question, I know.
And a very tricky one.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation of being here. Mm-hmm. And I'm really happy that you call me Chewy, because that's the way I like to be called. That the doctor part, the more years that pass through, the more obsolete I feel.
Yeah.
But the question is a good question. I think first you really need to understand what is meat cutting.
Uh-huh.
You really need to feel comfortable with the idea of converting one product into 5-6 different products, getting this cost and converting it into 6 or 7 different costs, and be able to cost it correctly, because the bone and the fat that you're going to trim out are not going to be sold, and they add to the total cost. But then if you cost it right, the margins for every one of these products is going to be right, so you can be selling these products. If you cost it wrong, then the margin of some of these products are going to be wrong, and intuitively the meat market manager will not be willing to sell those products. So he will avoid that primal.
Yeah.
And this is a very subtle change. But if you never realize that some of your market managers are not ordering these products.
Oh, yeah.
And before you know it, the mix of sales has been shifted. And then when that happens, you are actually not making the right margins because you are not having the whole mix of products.
Yeah. Yeah.
So first you have to feel comfortable with the fact that you're going to buy one problem, which is one meat cut, and you're going to convert it into 7 problems.
Yeah.
And then if you don't get your nose into it to find out if they're costing it right and cutting it right, you end up very far away from the parade, like my friend Joe Perales says in Mexico. So that's the first thing. But to be able to do that, you really need to be acquainted and happy working in a very cold environment.
Yeah.
And then the people that is working there perceives that you're happy doing that. And then you know not only how to cut the meat, but you know better than they do how to cut the meat. And that you can communicate with these guys in a way that they can understand. So creating a common language is a big part of it. And then creating a set of rules that the must do things that you cannot get away from.
Yeah.
So you have these rules how to operate, and this is the standard operating cutting procedure, and this is the standard operating costing procedure. And then if you fix that, and then in the middle of all this process, you make people feel proud of what they do, that makes a good meat department.
And I wasn't expecting any of that. That is such a profound approach to it, and that's probably why you're in the position you are, and the success that you've brought to HEB Mexico.
Well, thank you.
I want to reiterate.
It
It is
team,
exactly right, and the word whole is very, very important, especially for the listeners out there. Is the whole team approach? I like that. The whole system approach. You have to understand all of it from the very beginning to the very end. And if you can get your hands dirty, not everyone has that opportunity, but if you can go in there and fully understand the full meat cutting approach, as well as the yields and costing and how to manage the team, you will have a successful business.
Yes, and also you have to bring in a lot of people like the accountants.
The accountants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell me more about the accountants.
The financial guys.
Yeah.
You know, when they're used to average cost, or they are used to ABC costing. You know, things that you are put together and you add up all the cost. When you disassemble something, the costing becomes really weird for them.
Yeah, it does.
So they said, "Oh, wait a minute, you bought this cut of meat at $4 a pound, and you want to sell the fat for 10 cents a pound? Are you crazy?" And I said, "No, I could sell it at $4 a pound or $5, but nobody will buy it.
Right.
We'll end up throwing it away." So you have to bring those people in. They don't like the cold environments. You have to bring them in and do a yield test with them, and then do the costing, and then so they need to really get familiar with the process to be able to accept some of the things that go on.
Yeah.
And if you think cutting meat is a big deal, when we integrated backwards and started doing some of the fabrication and the slaughtering, you try to explain these financial guys that the 7% of the body weight is blood and you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
And you pay for it, 87 pesos for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to throw it away. And then, like, why? You know?
Yeah.
Well, some of those things of getting really acquainted with the process is what makes this successful or very painful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and to put things into context, so now, like recently this summer, we had some folks from Mexico. Dr. Velazco is one of the leaders in Mexico that they have this program where they train meat professionals in Mexico. And then the last part of that course is being held at Kansas State University in the meat lab, and we do a lot of processed meat. But we also have this very unique thing where we do the beef fabrication. We're talking about the Mexican beef fabrication, and then we do the American beef fabrication. Most of the cuts are the same, but there are certain cuts that we fabricated differently in Mexico. And just to put things into context, Dr. Velazco earned his PhD at K-State. And so he's got a lot of knowledge in meat cutting. One of his PhD project was like spending a lot of hours separating muscle by muscle. And can you tell us more about that? And because I think that's going to put a lot into context, like, as to how you earn that knowledge in fabrication.
well, the first thing I need to bring out is that when I was a student in K-State, I wasn't very wealthy.
Okay.
And then later in the process, I learned that I was living under extreme poverty conditions.
Oh my gosh.
because I didn't know how the standards of living in the U.S. versus what I got from the scholarship from Mexico. So then realized where I felt into the statistics. But one of the reasons that I learned how to cut meat is that I needed to work.
Yeah.
During the PhD program, I did a lot of work. And I got acquainted with how to cut meat in the U.S. And then when I was in Monterey Tech teaching, I did a lot of traveling through Latin America and learned how to cut meat in all the different countries. And then we had the opportunity of doing a project in Costa Rica. And we did muscle by muscle separation. And at that time, we were signing the agreements with some of the agricultural universities in the center part of the U.S. It was called MIAC, Mid-America International Agricultural Consortium. and we signed the agreement with Monterey Tech for tuition swap. K-State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, University of Missouri, Colorado State, and all those universities. I cannot think of all the names right now, but one of those universities was University of Nebraska and Lincoln. So Dr. Calkins, who is actually retiring this month, saw this and he got really enthusiastic about this project, and he came up with the idea of doing a muscle profiling research funded by the National Cattlemen and Beef Association, and I was happy to participate. Actually, this morning we were talking about that with the first time we did some of the muscle separation in University of Florida with Dr. Dwayne Johnson.
That's right.
We didn't have a way of bringing down the carcass, so we have to bone out some of the cuts on a ladder.
Oh yeah,
and he was kind of reminding me how uncomfortable I felt boning the round up there,
way up on top of a ladder,
taking on the ladder.
Oh, gosh, yeah. That's a liability problem.
I hate heights.
Oh.
So this is how I think I contributed to that idea. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from Dr. Calkins, and actually did a sabbatical in the University of Nebraska and Lincoln, whole semester, just working with several different research projects. And but cutting meat is probably one of my passions. I really enjoy cutting meat.
Yeah.
When I'm cutting meat, I forget about everything else.
Yeah.
And then this muscle by muscle separation created natural boundaries that if you could take care of those boundaries and avoid cutting through muscles, okay, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And now the U.S. industry is a big hamburger business. And then when you're boning out, you sacrifice precision for speed. And all that meat ends up in trimmings, and you have a beautiful market for trimmings. That's not a problem. But in Latin America, trimmings are not a good business.
No.
And then the more trimmings you make from cutting a carcass, the worse the result is going to be. So cutting through muscles is a capital sin. Now, I like to point out that I'm really happy working in HEB because it's a company that allows us to continue to grow, to continue to expand our knowledge and our participation in the industry. And when we do this series of courses that we call Diplomado, and we end up 1 week in Kansas to do this short course and practical applications in meat technology. 3 people from HEB are in the group being trained every year. So this is a way of continuing education. And also to HEB is really, really important that the technical people from all the suppliers know that the technical people in HEB, they know what we're talking about. We know the science and the practical applications. So it brings this conversation between suppliers and buyers to a higher level. Not only just price-driven conversation, but more into the science part of the conversation. So it makes a difference.
You bring a lot of competency to the job that you have, and I'm actually in awe a little bit now, knowing I've always thought very highly of you, but now knowing that you were part of the bovine myology project, that is absolutely incredible, because that was a game changer, especially for me. I remember I can picture the day and the room and everything when I first saw Dr. Calkins presenting on that in 2005. I remember, and it changed my life, changed my perspective. Anyone that's not familiar with that project, go look up bovine.unl.edu. It is the Bovine Myology Project. It's I mean, it's coming up on near 20 years.
Yeah.
This information, but it's still very relevant. This was when things like the Flatiron Steak came about, the Denver Steak,
Terrace Major.
The Terrace Major became a big deal. And if you're not familiar with the Terrace Major retailers out there, it's an amazing piece, but it goes a lot to the food service side because it's a great alternative to many of the other tender pieces.
On the arm blade, it is open on top of the blade. Once you take the blade apart, you will see it right there in one of the corners.
Yep.
Looks like a football, little rounded, a little flat muzzle. This beautiful.
Kind of torpedo shape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'll give the muzzle profiling credit to Dr. Calkins and his collaborators, and actually
Dr. Johnson.
Dr. Johnson, and also I have to mention Bo Regan.
Right.
Yeah, because he was involved into that.
That's right.
I just felt really honored that I was just in the middle of it.
Wow.
Yeah,
well, to have been there and to give even more perspective, in entire sides of beef were put through an MRI machine so that we can look at cross sections all the way through, and I use that very regularly, all of that information very regularly in my classes that I teach. So
tremendous contribution that they did to the meat industry. I have to refer to a conversation that I had with Dr. Mohammed Kumari, who's the highest authority on meat tenderness.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know, I think he remembers this conversation. We were at Clay Center, Nebraska, in a USDA research facility that they had there. And I said, "Hey, Dr. Kumari, the tenderness problem is not a muscle is not a muscle problem. It is a cutting method problem." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, when you cut a sirloin all the way through, those big old sirloin, you have the most tender muscle in the carcass and the worst, toughest muscle in the carcass in the same cut. How can you expect that this cut is going to be accepted by the consumer? So it's the way we cut the meat that makes the meat more or less tender. Suppose I convince you to eat a mother-in-law steak. You know what that is. It's a shank cut through.
It's the equivalent of the calf muscle
exactly,
on the
calf
animal.
muscle.
Yeah, it's very, very chewy.
So you grill it, and that's why they call it mother-in-law steak, because you feed it to your mother-in-law so she doesn't come back. But that is.
This is not an endorsement, by the way. This is
no, I'm just joking. I love her. So I just stressing the fact that is the way you present the product, and compare that way, the way you present the product to the expectation that the customer has. So you cut it like a steak, and intuitively the person is gonna grill it. And if they grill it, they're gonna be remembering you and your whole family later on. Okay. But if you cut it somewhere else, somehow else, so the people realize this is not for grilling. This is for cook it in liquid or sear it or whatever you want to do it.
Sous vide
Or whatever. And then you help the process.
and make improvements.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and what's really interesting too is, surprisingly, that gastrocnemius muscle is what is the name of it for all the meatheads out there. That's now where the Merlot steak comes from.
Yes,
which is actually pretty tender.
Also has the soleus muscle inside. The gastrocnemius, the soleus is in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So that's a good example right there. You get 100% satisfaction out of eating that if you cook it the right way.
Cook it the right way and cut it the right way to begin with, right?
So, this project actually changed an industry that I thought it couldn't be changed.
Yeah.
Because every time you talk to the packers, they're so infatuated with the way they do things already that creating a minute change, it has a profound effect on all the different lines. So they are very hesitant to do changes, unless, of course, what you're proposing has an impact in the value of the cutting.
Absolutely.
You know, so if the cutout value goes 10% because of the way you're doing your modifications, they will go for it.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about? I mean, we were just having this conversation in the Spanish version of MISPAD, talking about integrating the meat supply. So, what's new, or what's some of the new tendencies for those folks out there that want to integrate the process of their production line to have, I mean, everything vertically integrated? Can you tell us more about this? A little bit about your work that you're doing in HEB and.
Yes, complicated subject, but for many years I've been observing how we deviate from what the customer needed. Back in the 70s, maybe at the beginning of the 70s, they started with this conversation about the war against fat. And I love fat. You know,
Me too.
everything that has fat is tasty.
Yeah.
You know, if all the bakery products, they are tasty because they have a lot of fat. All the good steaks have fat. You know, so they decided to go into that direction, thinking that lowering the fat content in meat was going to make the population healthier. One of the biggest lies I ever heard. Because almost at the same time, they were talking about lard being bad for you. So the vegetable oil came into the scene, and they started doing a lot of frying. And somehow the customer got confused and thought, okay, we can eat all this new fat, you know, vegetable fat, because it's not lard. Lard is bad for you. This should be good. But nobody was counting calories. So the increase in French fries consumption, I mean, went to the roof. And then if you analyze the demographics, you realize that the population is not leaner. On the contrary.
No.
And so we sacrificed the quality of beef because of a false lead. And then we abandoned many consumers that really like the fatty meat. So if you look at the numbers, you will notice that in 10 years we lost half of the demand.
And not just beef, pork too.
Yeah, pork
right.
too.
I mean, it became the other white
the
meat.
other white meat. Yeah. So they want to compete with chicken. So then about the 80s, they started to realize that they needed to do something about it. And then they come up with the checkoff, and then the funding for doing research and the funding to do education and so on. And then we recover some of the demand of beef along the years, but never to those wonder years of the 70s or at the beginning of the 70s. But lately, maybe from 2014 to this moment, several different things happened. We have big droughts in the U.S. that affected the inventory of cattle, and then the packers needed to compensate more pounds per head because they didn't have enough heads. So they were feeding those animals beyond the regular killing weight. And then they started observing that the increment of choice carcasses was waking up a demand of meat.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to find select carcasses anymore.
Yes, it is.
Because they realize that if they fed it longer, they get better quality and a way better market for it. Now, if I think of my scientific background, I will have to say that we should know about that because the allometric growth tell us that the carcass continues to grow even when the average daily gain is not very attractive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In other words, you're gaining 1.5 kilos, which will be like
About 3 pounds.
3 pounds a day. And then you notice that you are not making 3 pounds a day, you want to kill the animal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you continue to push that weight, what actually doing, you are actually growing only the carcass.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the animal remains basically the same. So the allometric growth is higher on the carcass than the rest of the body, and you are actually incrementing the amount of kilos or amount of pounds of meat that you're going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
You will get higher dressing percent, higher carcass quality. You will probably get a little bit not as good yield grade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
a bit more fat usually.
But if you look at the numbers, like the grids that National Beef used to grade carcasses, if you look at the numbers, how they're put together, you can actually make more money if you go into a better quality.
Go a little farther, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that argument is really hard to sell in Mexico.
Okay.
Really, really, really hard. The empirical experience that the packers have in the U.S. and also all the science that is involved in it, that concept is easier to grasp in the U.S. than it is in Mexico. The Mexico feedlot operators, the day they notice that the average daily gain is coming down, they want to get rid of the animals, and sometimes those animals are just 1,000 pounds or 1,100 pounds. So they still have 300 pounds more to go, but they need to learn that. They need to realize that. And I bring this up because from all the meat we use in HEB, we import from the U.S. maybe 30 to 40% now.
Oh, wow.
And the reason we import it is that we cannot get that quality of meat in Mexico.
Okay.
And then we rely on certified Angus beef. You mentioned that. This, to us, certified Angus beef is a known brand for HEB Mexico.
Yeah.
And my regards to John Stika, my friend, and all his peers.
Yeah.
That those people we like very much. But we rely on that level of quality to attend to those customers that really want marble meat.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there will be other customers that would just like a low choice program or even a select program. But there are customers for just about every tier. You know, you have customers for lower value beef, or you have customers for prime certified Angus beef. So the opportunity relies on the fact that the producers are dislocated from the feedlots, and the feedlots are dislocated from the packers, and the packers are dislocated from the consumers.
Okay.
Or supermarkets and consumers. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to go back and tell the packer what to do for us with our intention very clear. And then we go to the feedlot and request exactly the same. And then we go to the producers, to the calf operations. And we make sure everybody makes money. If everybody makes money, they will continue to produce beef for us.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest pain cattle producers have, or a feedlot have, is that when you have your cattle ready, there's always a price drop. And then, it happens every time.
Yeah.
You know what? The price cattle is down. Just when you need to sell it.
Right.
Okay. And then the other challenge is that, okay, I can buy your cattle, I can make an effort and buy your cattle, but it will take a long time to pay you. And then those two factors were taken out of the equation in our process in Mexico.
So you're trying to streamline the connection
Yes.
of the entirety of the chain.
Yes. So we don't.
Good idea.
We never tell them that the price is down,
Yeah.
and we never tell them that we're going to take a long time to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
And just solving those two problems, you solve a lot of problems in the supply chain.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's something that we can all learn from, because you're right. Communication at any level in any business is absolutely important, and especially in the beef business, where it takes so long to raise an animal from birth to harvest, and all the segmentations that's involved in there. It does make a lot of sense to try to improve that communication channel, and that sounds like what your team is working on.
We actually have to become friends with the producers.
Yeah. We're all in this together. We're all trying to sell meat eventually.
Yes.
So,
With the same deal. Just we need to be. It's like a train with all the carts attached.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the retail business is pulling everybody at the same speed.
Yeah.
We the last 3 years, we made 2 trips to Kansas to visit a friend whose name is Galen Fink.
Mm-hmm.
He has a genetics company, but he knows everybody around that area in Kansas. So we visit with these Mexican producers. We visited feedlots and cow-calf operations. They look at the type of cattle they have. They look at the way they do things. And this is a way of changing their beliefs.
Mm.
Because we all are driven by beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And if the beliefs are the wrong ones, you end up in the wrong place.
Right.
Yeah. So our intention is to have these guys observe a different way of producing, and then they buy into the idea of, well, maybe I need to try something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we facilitate the process of them getting genetics. Better genetics will make better product.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be present with the packer. We need to be present with the feedlot.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be present with the backgrounder. We need to be present with the cow-calf producer. And everybody needs to know what the story.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, we have gotten good results.
Being transparent, I think that's one of the keys, and communicating this. Well, I think we're getting to the end. Again, we'll love to have you back sometime soon and talk. It's a lot of topics that we can cover, and especially, I think it's an unconventional way having a meat scientist at the retail level. I think this is a lot of his knowledge that he can apply, and getting to know the consumer. That's a different story.
Yeah.
The current consumer that we have out there, it's been changing. And anything else you want to add?
No, I just really appreciate this perspective. I'm in awe that you were part of the Bovine Myology Project. For anybody out there listening, make sure you check that out. It's an absolutely incredible bit of information. We covered a lot today, and so I think we're going to have another conversation in the future just to keep picking the brain of Chewy over here.
Well,
so.
thank you very much. I do love this industry. I have lots of friends in the scientific and academic side of the business, and I do have a lot of friends in the actual production. But I want to point out something that people don't give credit to the people doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that I like to work in HEB is that the person cutting the meat and myself we have the same importance.
Are equal.
Yep.
We're equal.
All part of the team. Yep.
Then ideas do not have a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
What's the word?
Hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter who has the idea. All ideas are worth a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody presents an idea, we protect the idea,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the origin of the idea. And we all agree that an idea can be improved, but the credit for the idea is always from the guy that created it.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, and by not having this hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
my meat cutters, they love when I got the knives and go into the meat shop and do work with them, because they feel they identify with me.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to tell you that I have people in the managerial level now that began at the very, very lowest level, and they went through the whole step ladder,
Mm-hmm.
and they grew to very important positions, because we do respect people that work with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important.
Absolutely. Respect, teamwork, and humility go a very long way.
Yes.
Yep. Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.